Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Springfield, Massachusetts Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame welcome to Mr. Steve Blake. There you are, sir. No worries, man. Take a seat. Welcome to Springfield, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
This is really exciting. You know, you and I were talking off mic, and it's just so much fun. I have the best job in the world because I get to catch up with people who I grew up and enjoyed, we're about the same age, enjoyed watching throughout. So I want to ask you your opinion about my last statement. You had a chance to play with some awesome teams, some great franchises, including Washington, including both teams in LA. It goes on and on. But when you are out in public, when people hear Steve Blake, am I correct that they most often associate you with your time on the court with the Trailblazers?
I would, not necessarily.
No?
I think playing for the Lakers is such a big market.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, and it's a big city, so a lot of people remember me from that. It kind of all depends on where I'm at. If I'm at Maryland,
yeah.
You know, people talk about Maryland basketball. If I'm in LA, they'll talk about the Lakers, and Portland, and on for all 8 teams I played for.
Yeah, and it's great because I mean I think a lot of people would give anything to have the career that you have because you're still in basketball with the Portland Trailblazers. Was there one stop along the way that you wished lasted longer, whether it was with, you know, any of the franchises, the 2 LA franchises, was there one place?
It's hard to pick just one,
Yeah.
but probably Portland and LA. Those are special cities to me. In Portland is where I live now. It's where I retired. My family, I had my kids there, and LA is just a special organization. I mean, playing with Kobe and other great players there. The weather's nice year round, which is a plus when you're playing. So it was. I would have enjoyed playing there longer.
I love hearing that. I'm always curious because there are really a couple of different routes that NBA careers take, right? One is that a guy stays in a place and then maybe goes 1 or 2 other places. And then the other, of course, like we're talking about, is the opportunity to see basically the whole country with this job that's unlike any other job. Yeah,
absolutely. I was definitely fortunate to live in a lot of cities, meet a lot of great people.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Miami, Florida, and if I didn't play for the Blazers, I would have never known that's a city I wanted to live in and raise my kids. So definitely fortunate to have the experience to move all around the country.
I want to talk about growing up in Miami like you did, because your upbringing really coincided with the upbringing of professional basketball in Miami, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think about Glenn Rice, who was sitting in that chair just a couple of days ago, Ronnie Cycli and Sherman Douglas.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the way that having professional basketball in your home city at such a formative age helped maybe steer you to basketball?
Yeah, when I was real young, you know, Miami didn't have a team. So I forget how old I was when they started the organization, but it was just a lot of excitement around it. And it just drove my passion for the game and love for it. And, you know, my parents took me to games, so I grew up watching those guys and trying to be like them. So it was fun.
Who was your guy?
Probably Tim Hardaway.
Yeah.
When watching him play with the Heat was special, and I got fortunate enough he was a coach of mine my last year with the Pistons, so it was kind of cool to catch up with him and let him know how I used to watch him as a little kid and go into games, and now he was a coach of mine.
That's so cool. So let me talk a little bit about your high school experience, because you had a chance to compete and win at 2 different high schools. Miami Senior High School, another guy who we had sitting in that seat last week, Udonis Haslem, and you teamed up to play for Frank Martin, now the coach at the University of South Carolina. My wife's a Gamecock. She makes me say that. So let's talk about that experience first. Was this the moment where you realized that basketball for Steve Blake was going to be different than basketball for most of your friends?
Yeah, you know, playing for Frank Martin at Miami High was challenging. It helped me grow a lot as a kid, as a person. if you've seen Frank Martin as a coach, he challenges his players, and it drove me to have the work ethic that I had, and playing with Udonis and a couple other guys that could have been pro players. So I knew I was good, but at that such a young age for me, at least, I wasn't thinking NBA then. I was just trying to get to college.
So they often say that coaches mellow with age. Does that mean Frank Martin was more intense when you played for him?
Probably. No, he's a very intense coach. He gets 110% out of his guys every time on the court, and as much as he yells at you, you know that he cares about you more than anybody.
Yeah. And then you end up having the opportunity as well to play for another Hall of Fame coach in Steve Smith from Oak Hill Academy. I'm curious about that from two different levels. One, the opportunity to play for and compete on a national stage, but two, also that as you're leaving home, you are playing, and you're staying, you're living in Virginia. Was that transition difficult for a young Steve Blake, who to that point had been Hollywood, Florida, Miami, Florida, that's home base?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to be walking around here and then come across Steve Smith, my old high school coach, seeing his picture up there.
Yeah.
It definitely prepared me for college. Oak Hill Academy is a boarding school where you go and live there for the school year. And coming from a big city, Oak Hill is in Mount Wilson, Virginia, and it's in the middle of nowhere. So it was an eye-opening experience for me, and it was a transition period where it was really tough. But once you got into a groove and basketball season started, and you're playing on the biggest stage in high school basketball, we finished undefeated, won a national championship in high school, and so I wouldn't have changed anything.
And now having the chance to play for, I want to talk about Gary Williams coming up as well. You're coaches, and being a coach now, I'm just realizing this right now. You have your resume of coaches played for. I'm curious now, I'm sort of going off what I was planning on asking. What pieces of those coaches are you taking with you to the floor now when you're working with younger players? Do you ever consciously think this is something that Coach Williams would not like? This is something, is it having them over your shoulder all the time?
No, I'm not constantly thinking about it. I look back at my experiences and strategies that different coaches have used, and I've had some really laid-back coaches and some screamers, and I kind of I take bits and pieces from all of them, but I mostly just want to be myself and bring to the game what I can bring to it from all my learning experiences from the past. I'm not a screamer. I'm more of a laid-back type of guy. But yeah, I've learned a lot from, playing for Phil Jackson and Mike D'Antoni, who's having success now, and you name it. I've played for a lot of coaches, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
I'm a sucker for recruitment stories from before the social media era. And I'm also a sucker for Gary Williams recruitment stories. One of the real, I mentioned it about you, and I'll say it to your face, you're one of the great gentlemen of the game. Gary Williams, one of the great gentlemen of the game. Can you talk to us about your recruitment process with Coach Williams and what it was that brought you to Maryland versus the other schools that all were knocking on your door?
Yeah, when you're being recruited early on, you're getting thousands of letters from lots of schools, and you kind of just have to take it as it is and kind of wait for a school to be really serious about you. And I think Maryland was one of those first programs to say, hey, we want you to come here. And and it wasn't even Gary Williams. This one thing that really sticks out to me is when I was at Miami High, Maryland was playing North Carolina when they were #1 in the country, and I was watching the game, and Maryland beat them. And the very next day, assistant coach Dave Dickerson was at my high school recruiting me. So it meant a lot to me that, he left such an exciting time to come down and tell me that, hey, we want you to be a part of something like that in the future. Yeah. And then when I got to Maryland on visits and sitting down with Coach Williams, you could tell his passion for the game, how much he cared about his players, all the things he talked about, teaching the game and his intensity and all that stuff. And So I just liked that he was at the program for a long time, was going to be there for a long time, and could teach me the game.
And once you get to Maryland, you're thrown right in. I mean, a starter from day one. Day one, minute one, Steve Blake is on the court. Mm-hmm. What was that transition like for some of the veteran guys? I think, because what we saw in 2002, you and Juan, Chris wasn't even there yet, right? I mean, he was a year behind you. Was it difficult for some of the senior guys on the team at that time to accept a freshman point guard coming in and starting right away in that conference?
I don't think so. That year before I got there, Terrell Stokes graduated and Steve Francis left early for the pros. So it kind of left a void where they needed a point guard to step in and play right away. And so I was able to do that. But I had been there all summer long, playing pickup with these guys. My style of play, I love to pass the ball, so I kind of, making guys happy. And so I think they felt comfortable with me coming in and taking on that role right from the start.
And then, of course, we get to your junior year, that incredible run, you and Lonnie and Chris and Juan. Of course, we'll talk more about Juan in a little while because your careers intersect a couple of times, and I love that about that backcourt. Basketball was better when Juan and Steve were together. When do you realize that year is a special one? At what point? Was there a game? Was there a moment? Was it before the season?
It actually started the year before. We were in the Final Four, and we lost to Duke in a heartbreaker. And when that game was over, we got closer. We kind of talked to each other, and we decided, we're going to get back here, and we're going to win it next year. And so that's kind of where it started. That defeat kind of drove us to be better. And so we just kind of used that as fuel. And there's no better feeling than working extremely hard with your brothers and accomplishing something special. I'm
curious about after that title, when you're cutting the nets down and you know that a number of those guys are leaving. Having chatted with you now for a bit, I think I know the answer to this, but was there ever a feeling like my stock will never be higher? This might be the time to leave school, take care of it later. Was there ever that thought for you that you and Juan could leave together, join the league together?
Yeah, for sure. All of our goal as players, for the most part, is to get to the NBA. Yeah. And after winning a championship, some people would say, hey, you might be ready to go now. Some people say you should wait. So I explored all my options. It was a tough decision, but I wasn't the caliber player or name that a lot of guys were. I knew I wasn't going to go in the first round, so I loved college, and I still had some great friends on the team. We could still do something special the next year, and so that's why I decided to stay. And
it obviously works out for you. You're an all-conference player at that point. You're really, and it's so funny to talk to people about them as stock, but your stock really, I think, increased. And here we are, draft night. You go in the second round, probably just as you had been expecting. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about your landing spot? You stay in the same region of the country. You end up being drafted by Washington. Where were you during the draft? What is your draft day story?
Yeah, during the draft, I was back home in Miami and at my grandparents' house, and we probably had about 30 to 40 family members there, which was kind of nerve-wracking, just not knowing if you're going to get drafted. It's not a given, for someone in my position. And just watching TV, and I saw it just like everyone else did. They say your name, the pick on TV, and we all jump for joy. And a couple minutes later, Eddie Jordan, from the coach of the Wizards, gave me a call, and that was kind of how it started.
Occasionally, guys talk about, or women who have been drafted talk about the desire to stick around and enjoy the moment after the draft. Enjoying a couple of days. Nate Robinson said he was waiting for his parade, but he had to get on the plane and go to work. Is that your story too? Did you have to immediately report, go to work, go to a press conference? And if so, how did that feel as a young man to be reporting for work?
Yeah. It was surreal for a couple days. Yeah. But yeah, definitely you got to get right on a plane. Flew to Washington, press conferences the next day, and it just goes from there. And then you're getting on the court, you're getting acclimated with the new practice facilities and new coaches and players, and it's fast moving, and you know, it was an experience that never changed, for sure.
Yeah. Now, a couple years later, you get a chance to play. You and Juan Dixon both sign with the Portland Trail Blazers. Obviously, your careers had gone different ways until then, but to get a chance, and you referred to your team at Maryland as your brothers, and I think anyone who plays competitively knows that that locker room is a sacred place. You do become family. Mm-hmm. What were those discussions like before you both signed with the Trailblazers, going into this, again, sort of the same era of your careers?
Yeah, and you know, he got drafted by the Wizards the year before, so we played 1 year together in Washington, right. And then I was on my honeymoon, and he had signed with Portland, and then I got a phone call while I was in Bora Bora from the Blazers saying,
really?
Hey, we'd like you to come join Juan here. And,
really? And
so that's kind of how it all came together. We stopped there on the way back home and made it official, and it was just kind of pretty cool to be playing with Juan again.
Really cool. It might be the only way that your new wife would forgive you taking a business call on your honeymoon is if it's to play with one of your best friends.
Yeah, it was. She knew I kind of had to be on call, ready to figure out where I was going to be playing.
So this is one of my favorite moments, because now is a chance. After this next question, I only have 3 questions left for Steve Blake. But after that, if you've ever wanted to ask a question of one of the great basketball players of the last 25, 50 years, this will be your chance. If you've got something that you're wishing I would have asked, after this question, I'll ask you to raise your hand, and one of the great Hoop Hall staffers will come and recognize a few of you and put you in a line to our right, your left, and you will have that opportunity. It's so interesting to me because both you and Juan have become coaches. Juan at the collegiate level, you at the pro level. And they always say that guards are the smartest dudes on the floor.
I don't know if the bigs would always say that.
As someone who's 5'6", I'll just make the claim, guys our size, smartest guys on the court. Was there a moment when you both started thinking about what life would be like after playing? And was that a conversation that you had to keep, because that's how you keep the fire burning when you're our age, right? Unless you're going to play in the Big 3 league.
I'm considering it. That would be fun. I think it would be fun. Maybe at some point I'll do that.
That would be great.
I think that's a great opportunity for players to keep playing. You know, when you're in the moment playing, we didn't talk too much about our futures as far as coaching goes, to be honest. Yeah. But as we got older towards the very end of our career and being at some events together at Maryland, he kind of shared his passion and heart for wanting to be a coach, and I was kind of still exploring that phase, and if it was something I wanted to do, and I'm kind of still in that exploration phase, being you know, not a full-time coach at the Blazers, but still coaching. So it's a great profession. I'm literally leaning towards coaching for a long time, and I know Juan will do a great job as a coach as well.
If you have a question for Steve Blake, now's a chance. You can raise your hand. One of the great Hoop Hall staffers will come around and recognize those of you who would love to ask that question. Steve, the game from the moment you entered the league to where it is now has developed so much. I mean, it is a different era. In my estimation, you were a little ahead of your time. As a guy who could thrive in 2018 NBA. Is that the kind of stuff that you talk to players about now, about how this is a point guard league? This is a league that allows point guards to do things that, and is that frustrating for you to know that when you were playing, it was a big league, it was about the bigs?
It was. When I first got in, it was, you know, the typical positions. You know, your center was the biggest guy, the 4-man was another big bruiser, and the point guards are running pick and rolls. But now you got stretch, you know, guys picking and popping from the center position, the power forward position, you know. So, and the point guard for sure has a huge role now. There's not as many post-ups. They have the freedom to create, which is so much fun. And, you know, like playing for guys like Mike D'Antoni, I really enjoyed, because he just let the point guard go out there and really run the show. And you see James Harden doing that now. But it's a great game. It's a fun style of basketball. I'm glad I kind of got to play in both ways.
Yeah.
But it's fun to watch the guards get out there and just do their thing.
It is a guard league.
It is. It's fun.
It's awesome. My last question before we get to the hard ones. These are the fastballs coming over here. I want you to know that. These guys are always the ones that ask the hard questions. This moment right now, you've seen the world, you've won championships at nearly every level. But this moment right now, your first time in Springfield, your first time seeing the Hall of Fame, can you talk to us about what this is like sitting beneath all of the ones who have come before us, talking to a group of people who are here because of their love for the game? What is this moment like for you?
It's special. I mean, these men and women paved the way for me to be able to be here, and so to kind of be able to see their accomplishments, what each of them has brought to the game is special. And I'm just fortunate enough to be a young kid from Miami that worked really hard and had some great breaks and great experiences playing with great players and coaches. And so to kind of be here now and see all these other, great people and what they've accomplished is great. It's awesome.
The game gives back, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Blake. Now let's get to some hard questions. Come on over. I only have a couple of different requests. One, you allow me to hold the microphone when you ask your question, and the second is introduce yourself to Mr. Blake before you ask your question. Is that a deal? Come on over. Here, I'll stand up. Hey, bud. Here, come on right up here. Go right ahead.
How much championships have you won?
Fair question.
Yeah, I've won a state championship in high school in Florida. My senior year in high school at Oak Hill Academy, we finished #1 in the country. And then I won, in 2002, won the national championship in college. And I didn't get one in the pros, unfortunately.
Maybe as a coach.
Maybe as a coach, yep.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question.
Great question.
Appreciate it.
What was your name?
Jason?
Jason, thank you. That's a great question.
Thanks, Jason.
I want to give Jason a round of applause. Here, come on through. We'll keep it rolling. How are you today? Excellent, sir.
How are you, Blake?
Yeah. How you doing?
Nice to meet you. I had a question. I want to know the story behind the Maryland fight video. Like, what happened at practice?
Well, he's referring to a video at Maryland when we were playing a pickup game, and a scuffle broke out between myself and someone else. And the interesting about that is that video didn't come out until 10 years later. I had no idea it was out there, and all of a sudden it just showed up, and I was like, oh, goodness. But it was, I'm a competitive person. The other guy was a super competitive person too, and we kind of just, you don't see it in the video, but we had been going at it for a while, and it just kind of came to a point, and unfortunately that happens. I don't recommend it. I don't, condone it, but in competitive sports, sometimes it can get heated.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You got it.
I told you these were hard questions. Want to give him a round of applause? Hey, bud. How's it going?
Hey, Steve. Nice to meet you. My name's Sheldon.
Nice to meet you.
I was wondering about Kobe's intensity during practice and stuff, and how you kind of, if that's like super true, because I hear about that a lot, and how did you like that, or if it is true, and how did that help the team, I guess?
Yeah, he's a special player, special person. He is the most intense when it comes to basketball of all the people I've played with. And it's not just his just focus and intensity. He takes care of his body probably more than anyone I've been around, except maybe Nash. He mentally prepares for the games and practices probably as much as anybody. And he's super competitive. And I think because he puts all of himself into it, he kind of expects others to do the same. And so that's why he expects a lot of his teammates. And me being the competitor that I am, I loved it. He's one of my favorite teammates because he was all about winning. And that's what I wanted to do, was win. So we got along real well.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
You got it.
Great question. Let's bring in the closer. Here we go. This one's going to be tough. Hey.
You got me? All right.
My name is Aaron. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is Ezekiel.
Hi, Ezekiel.
And my question for you is, what player, when you came into the league, helped guide you, influence you into becoming the player that you were? A lot of college kids come in and don't realize how different the NBA is and what a business is. What players kind of took you under the wing and helped guide you a little bit?
Yeah, a guy by the name of Chris Whitney was a a point guard for the Wizards when I got there, and he was a veteran for, I don't know, at the time, I don't know, maybe 10 years or more. And he kind of told me what it was going to take. You know, like little things like if there was a shot clock violation, I owed him $5 because it's the point guard's job to know the shot clock and communicate to everyone on the floor that one little situation. So little things like that, he taught me a lot. And from afar, I loved watching Jason Kidd and Steve Nash, guys that I felt like I could try and play like, so I try to pick up as much as I can from watching them. And then, the other guys, Christian Laettner was another veteran on the team who kind of took me under his wing. And so I had an opportunity to learn from some really good guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. I have one last, thank you. I have one last question, then I'll let you get out of here. You also, so you straddled a couple of eras we talked about from a playing perspective. You also straddled some eras from a video game perspective. Right? I mean, when you came in, that was sort of the beginning of the video game boom, right? I mean, it was 10 years past NBA jams. You were talking NBA 2K. Was that a thrill seeing yourself on and did you ever, were you a video game guy? Are you a gamer? Did you ever play?
I had periods in time where I played a lot, and yes, I did play with my character.
Yeah, that's well, nice edit.
So, but it is interesting. I saw a few years ago a tweet, and it wasn't about me. It was actually about Kobe, and it showed his character from when he was a rookie to how it looked when he retired, and it was like night and day. It looked like a Lego figure compared to like a real life looking person. So I kind of went through that myself a little bit as well.
That's awesome. Steve, thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Blake. And so now you get to have all the fun, right? Those of you who ask questions, thank you.